And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Saturday, November 30th, 2024. And looking at the way things are shaping up here for the late weekend, early in the upcoming week, we have low pressure here in the North Pacific, a stream of moisture coming northward from the North Pacific in along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Winter storm warnings are going to be in effect for this area of the southern central Panhandle. As much as 6 to 14 inches of snow could fall through early Monday morning, especially up through areas of the northern Panhandle there around Juneau and areas further westward. It's all part of a stream of almost atmospheric river, again, where we have this enhanced area of moisture coming in off the North Pacific. Farther west, IFR conditions along the western Aleutians out there into the North Pacific. Otherwise, generally, high pressure is in place eastern Russia, northern parts of the mainland, and into northern northwest Canada. That will tend to be the theme here. As we go through Sunday afternoon, we're going to find some of that moisture. IFR conditions kind of pulling back to the northwest for Sunday afternoon. We have extensive IFR conditions covering the Panhandle, both the inner channels and the outer coast, pulling up to around Yakutat Bay and up through the eastern and central Gulf. Back to the west, some areas of IFR here, Alaska Peninsula, outside of Bristol Bay, southeast Bering, back toward the Pribilovs around St. Matthew. And for Monday morning, there's a shot of colder air that's going to be coming down along the Yukon River Valley, heading toward the west-southwest. And as that does so, we do expect with that cold air coming in out across the Bering, there'll be areas of IFR there, especially west of the Pribilovs and southwest of St. Matthew. But again, IFR conditions persist across the Panhandle on Monday morning, including the eastern Gulf. The mainland, generally fair skies should be noted. We had some pretty cold temperatures, 40 below zero at Tok the other morning, and similarly that cold again this Saturday morning. But we expect VFR conditions with that high pressure dominating much of the central northern interior for Monday afternoon. Still IFR conditions across much of the Panhandle, out across the lower and eastern Gulf, North Pacific, back toward Kodiak Island and along the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. As this will be the focus here going into December, we are going to see waves of low pressure and surges of moisture come up out of the North Pacific and impact areas along the Gulf Coast, anywhere from the Panhandle westward to along the Kenai, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula. So the weather will remain active along this area here as we go through early December. Pass conditions way to the north, Brooks Range, VFR, Anatuvik, and Adigan passes. Lake Clark and Merrill will see MVFR conditions give way to VFR conditions on Sunday. Rainy Pass, MVFR becoming VFR, and then we expect Windy Pass eastward through the Alaska Range, VFR conditions on Sunday at Isabel and Mentasta as well, dropping down across the Copper River Basin. Tanita Pass, VFR conditions. We've seen temperatures the past couple of mornings down around 35, as cold as 35 below zero around Gulkana. And Portage Pass VFR conditions expected on Sunday. And then Chilkoot and White starts out with a sliver of VFR conditions there early Sunday morning, but quickly giving way to IFR conditions as that moisture flow pulls the snow, lower ceilings, and visibilities back to the north and west. So conditions will be definitely deteriorating there up there at Chilkoot and White. So freezing levels at the surface are down here into the southeast Bering along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, the western Gulf, northern Gulf, and then coming down in along the outer and into the inner channels of the southern Panhandle. Notice the little bump in freezing levels aloft, 6,000 feet. That just signals some warmer air aloft being drawn in and out ahead of a frontal system, low pressure back here. So that is what's helping to feed the moisture to create the areas of accumulating snow. Some of that heavy, as I mentioned, as much as 6 to 14 inches of snow could fall over areas of the northern central Panhandle as we go through Sunday and into Monday morning. As a result, considerable moderate icing is expected across the Gulf Coast in through the Panhandle. As you go further south, above 6,000 feet in those moist, where we have the best precipitation production going on. And as you get down toward Haida Gwaii, above 8,000 feet. But along the northern Gulf Coast back toward Prince William Sound, that area there above 2,000 feet. And then way out to the west, western Aleutians could see some moderate icing above 4,000 feet. Looking at the upper level winds, 30,000 feet, southwesterly jet core, 100 to 115 knots coming in right over the southern central panhandle. Broad southwesterly flow across the North Pacific into western Canada. Back here to the west, we have the circulation as such. Winds are offshore, east-northeast through the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait, back through St. Lawrence Island and off the Yukon coast with a maximum there just southwest of St. Lawrence and north of St. Matthew, upwards of 95 knots at the mid-levels or 700 millibars, and then bringing it down to 3,000 feet, a broad belt of winds 35 to as high as 65 knots coming in off the North Pacific across the southeast Gulf, but especially Haida Gwaii, southern panhandle into the mountains of British Columbia. We could see locally some higher winds of 50 to 60 knots from the southwest. Back here out over the lower Bering, we have a low circulation here. Colder air being drawn from northeast to southwest. There's a belt of stronger winds associated with that push of colder air. So anywhere from 40 to 60 knots getting out here out over the northern Bering Sea. And then at 3,000 feet, we find southwest flow coming up out of the North Pacific in excess of 45 to 65 knots coming onshore there around British Columbia and Haida Gwaii. Here's that push of stronger winds associated with this shot of colder air that's going to be working its way west-southwestward along the Yukon River Valley and pulling out there through Norton Sound and the lower Yukon Delta. Winds on Sunday within this region could be 45 to as high as 60 knots, and as a result, we do expect the possibility of some moderate to locally isolated severe turbulence here in the Yukon Valley, especially north of the Alaska Range, south of the Brooks Range, extending into the higher terrain there north of Nome and Golovin. And then also there could be some locally stronger turbulence on the moderate to isolated severe just outside of Cook, the entrance there of Cook Inlet, and then also here Dixon entrance in the south, the end of the Panhandle up there against the intercoastal mountains, surface to 6,000 feet. And as we come further west, there could be moderate turbulence back through portions of the central and western Aleutians on Sunday from the surface to 3,000 feet.